she wanted to, her urges or her interest in suiciding was something that she chose not to do because of the worry that she would hurt them by suiciding.
The voice said to the effect of, you should kill the kids. This is your last chance so that you can kill yourself.
Mainly her mother and her children.
Could you please tell the jurors your first and last name?
Avram Mack.
And would you spell your name for the record, please?
Avram is spelled A, V like Victor, R like Robert, A like Apple, M like Mary.
And I'm just going to ask you to speak in a loud, clear voice. And if you need to kind of push closer to the microphone, that might help.
will.
Thank you. What do you do for work, sir?
I'm a psychiatrist.
And how long have you been a psychiatrist?
After training, I've been a psychiatrist for 22 years now.
Were you able to make observations of, for instance, whether she maintained eye contact with you when speaking?
Right, so she did maintain eye contact.
Okay. What about her emotional state?
So overall, if we go through the various components, like what's called her affect, which is her emotional expression or her mood, generally speaking, there were not many abnormalities in her presentation, and I can go through them. They include the way in which she speaks, that is to say the rapidity of speech, if the speech is made in sort of regular intervals between words. In terms of thought, does the person, and in this case did Ms. Clancy, make goal-directed ideas? Was there a particular content of the ideas? So generally speaking, for all the components of the mental status examination, there were not really abnormalities. I would say at some points she seemed distressed by some topics. I believe tearful at one point, but otherwise nothing remarkable on mental status examination.
Okay. And in these evaluations, when you're interviewing the individuals, are you also kind of taking account of their physical presentation?
Yes.
And obviously, when you met with her in April of 2026, you were able to observe her physical condition, right?
Yes.
And what were your observations of her physical condition?
Well, she's utilizing a wheelchair. Generally speaking, there were not necessarily abnormal movements that I observed. She seemed comfortable physically.
Did you find that she was able to kind of navigate her situation herself? Meaning you were in a room with her with other individuals, right?
Yes.
And she was able to kind of take care of her own.
I'm going to object leading at this point, just as they object.
Sustain, if you just ask the observations.
What did you observe her do as far as moving herself around the room? Was she able to do that?
Yes, at the moments when there were transitions, when we took a break and she went out to the hall, she was able to navigate her wheelchair one place or another.
And when you spoke with her on April 10th and April 12th, were you able to kind of have a conversation with her about her level of functioning at the Tewksbury?
Yes.
And did she tell you anything about what her general day looked like?
She described her general day. She described basically her existence there at Tewksbury.
Okay. And did she indicate to you whether she engaged with other patients, or did she spend her day mostly in bed, or what did she say about that?
Mostly, she described she stays in bed or on her own. I don't think she described interacting with patients very much. There were a couple of ways in which she did interact with staff, at least. There was a therapist that she described working with. She did describe having had a physical therapist at a certain point. I'm not sure if I remember if she still was getting physical therapy. She stated she wasn't very interested in the physical therapy that she was getting there. She wasn't interested in the food there. She described having visitors at a not infrequent basis, and that sometimes she was able to eat food or drinks that were brought in by them.
And who were her visitors, if you recall?
Family members mostly, as well as, I believe, both, and I'm not sure if they were specifically from the Brigham or Mass General, but or any place in particular, but I believe religious figures, chaplain or priest from some organizations.
And her having told you that she kind of has visitors, were you able to corroborate that in reviewing records that she had visitors?
Yes.
And were you able to corroborate or were you able to identify in the records that she did interact with staff and patients at the hospital, according to the records?
To some degree, yes.
And you said that she had indicated to you that the food wasn't appealing at the hospital. And did you have the chance to observe her consuming her own snacks or beverages?
Beverages, yes.
Now, did she indicate to you her level of attention to hygiene and grooming while at Tewksbury?
She did. She described that she wasn't very interested in her own hygiene or grooming.
And were you able to later in the conversation speak with her about her ability to take care of her own daily activities like grooming? For instance, showering. Was she able to do that on her own?
Showering is embarrassing. It requires staff to help her. And that's one way in which she would rather not. It may also be that she described a lack of interest, so it's both components.
When you observed her, did she appear to be disheveled or not properly groomed in your meetings on April 10th and 12th?
No, she appeared groomed sufficiently, and I believe her hair was combed and she was wearing neat clothing.
When you met with her at the Tewksbury Hospital, did you go over with her what her current treatment regimen is, what current medication she was on?
I did,
Was she able to tell you what medication she was taking?
yes,
And were you able to confirm that with the records, that that was an accurate report?
yes.
So what medications, when you met with her in April 2026, was she currently on?
Well, in terms of psychiatric medications, the main medication of note is olanzapine. I believe that there were several medications being used for her physical needs. One that helps with her bladder, one that helps with movement of the GI system,
What was the initial dose that she was prescribed for it?
just 25 milligrams.
And what is a 25 milligram dose of Seroquel? What is that generally prescribed for?
Well, it's often prescribed these days to help individuals to sleep. But Seroquel is also, like Zyprexa, a antipsychotic medication. It can be used to help people to sleep. It can be used to help psychosis. It can be used to help the treatment of depression.
And as far as your review of the medication timeline for this defendant with the Seroquel, would the amount of time that she took the Seroquel have had any lasting effects biologically on her brain or her body?
There's no known effect that one would have from the amount of time that she took it. There could have been temporary effects, which could have been affecting her functioning or her psychological reaction to her functioning. But there's no known biological long-term effect.
So when you say that they could have some effect, are we talking about symptoms or negative symptoms maybe?
So Seroquel might affect a person's ability to think straight. We talked earlier about cognition, the ability to pay attention, to concentrate, to have memory. And Seroquel can negatively affect your cognitive functioning, although it is expected that that will eventually go away when you stop taking the medication.
And is Seroquel a type of medication that lingers in a person's system?
Not substantially. There are some medications that do linger, like diazepam or Valium, which is another medication that she was later prescribed. All medications are, on a relative basis. So diazepam will stay in your body much longer than, say, lorazepam, a different benzodiazepine.
So based on everything that you reviewed in this case, were you able to come to a conclusion about diagnosis?
Yes, I did.
And at the time that you conducted this evaluation, what is your opinion about diagnosis?
My opinion about her diagnosis in the span from 2022 to 2023 is that she suffered from what's called a major depressive episode. That probably is a part of what's called a major depressive disorder, but the important point about it is the major depressive episode.
What made you come to that conclusion based on her presentations?
The information about her feelings and the progression of her illness highlighted that it was best represented by a major depressive episode. It's a condition defined in DSM-5 where an individual displays problems with mood, problems with feeling pleasure, feelings of guilt or worthlessness, problems with appetite, problems with sleep, preoccupation with death or suicide, poor concentration, poor energy, perhaps also what's called psychomotor agitation or retardation. So one doesn't necessarily need to show all of those, but as it is in the DSM criteria sets, one needs to have a certain threshold. And her history and her description of her experience, in my view, matched a major depressive episode.
Okay. Were you able to identify that she presented with anxiety at various points?
Yes, very much.
And did you also make observations of obsessive thinking?
Yes, obsessive thinking is a kind of anxiety where you repeatedly think about a topic, maybe that you're asking, what if, what if, what if? And it's the kind of form of anxiety that you frequently see in an anxiety disorder called generalized anxiety disorder. I think it's possible she also had generalized anxiety disorder, but that is sort of secondary to the major depressive episode.
Okay. Now, in the time closest to January 24th of 2023, did you take a look at what her presentation or what her mental state was then, based on all the information that you had available to you?
Yes, I did.
Did you identify whether she was ever presenting in a manic state or a hypomanic state?
Throughout the period from 2022 to 2023, no. There was never indication of any element of mania or hypomania.
So just to kind of make it kind of clear to the jury here, when you talk about major depressive disorder, that's a identified disorder in the DSM, right?
Yes.
And when we use terminology like mania, right, what is mania?
So mania is a mood state, just like major depressive episode is a mood state. And these are the sort of building blocks of the mood disorders, bipolar disorders and major depressive disorder. So just like major depressive episode, mania is defined in the DSM, where with a certain time threshold, in this case for mania, 7 days, where you consistently have at least 4 of the following symptoms, you would be called being in a manic state. So that includes distractibility, a type of thinking called flight of ideas, grandiosity, excessive goal-directed behavior, pressured speech or some abnormality of speech, a reduced degree of need for sleep, and also the 7th would be an engagement in activities that have a high potential that are pleasurable but have a high potential for painful consequences. So mania requires 7 days of that, most of the day, every day, and you need 4 over 7 days. Hypomania is a lesser type of mania, and you need only 3 over a 4-day period. In both cases, as it is for major depressive episode, you also need to demonstrate that the person is impaired in a clinically significant way. That is to say, they have clinically significant impairment or distress. So
Going to your conversation with the defendant about the events of January 24th, 2023, you, in your interview with her, were able to speak with her about her recollection of that day, correct?
Yes.
And one of the things that was done in that interview was that she was explaining what happened in chronological order, right? From the beginning of the day to the last thing she could remember.
That's correct.
Did she also tell it to you in reverse?
She was asked to recite it in reverse, yes.
And did she tell the same story forwards and backwards?
Yes.
Was she able to recall details of some parts of the day but not others?
Yes, I would say that's correct.
And did she describe to you when she heard this voice?
Her experience that is called a voice occurred in the late afternoon.
Do you recall what she reported about the voice?
Her experience was that the voice was of a male, and it was loud.
And what did the voice say?
The voice said to the effect of, "You should kill the kids. This is your last chance so that you can kill yourself."
And what did she say happened after she heard this voice?
She engaged in the activity of taking her children's lives.
And she was able to describe to you how she did that, correct? And she first stated that she took Dawson down to the basement
Yes,
and then wrapped the exercise band around his neck and strangled him.
yes.
And what did she say that she said when she did that?
She described that while that was happening, she was saying out loud, "Go to God."
And did she describe the same for both Cora and then Callan?
Essentially, yes.
And the voice that she said she heard, was it one time or more than one time she heard the voice?
Multiple times is what she described.
And after she had killed the kids, did the voice continue in her report?
I don't remember that it did. It may have, I don't remember.
And then after the kids were gone, she then made an effort to take her own life, correct? And how did she do that?
Right, so she did. She described that she went ahead to take her life or attempt to take her life with multiple steps. She went to her room upstairs in the house and took the various medications that were present. She cut at her wrists and at her neck, and then she caused herself to fall from the window.
Okay, and as far as going out the window, did she tell you whether she had to do anything with the screen?
She described to me that she cut the screen.
Okay. And then she dove out the window.
Well, objection, that's not what he said.
Well, what did she do after she cut the screen?
She fell from the window.
Did you ask her, or was there conversation about the phone call that she received from Patrick?
There was.
And was she able to clearly identify when the call came from Patrick?
I don't exactly recall exactly when, but it was sometime in the around 18 to 20 minutes that this was happening that she received that call.
Do you recall if part of the conversation about the timeline of events, whether the voice came as soon as Patrick left the house or before or after the phone call?
My recollection is that it happened as soon as Patrick had left.
Now, were there some things in what she was telling you about the events that was different from what you reviewed from other information in this case?
Can you say that again?
Yeah, I'm just asking if you recall that there were things in the version that she told you in your interview that were different or not consistent with the information you knew about the case.
Well, two things come to mind. One is the locking or the closing of the bedroom door, and the other is the cutting of the screen of the window.
Okay, and as far as the locking or closing of the bedroom door, do you recall what she told you about that?
She denied that she had done that.
And so from the information you reviewed about reports from Patrick and everything else, did you know that the door had been locked?
That was my understanding.
And the second thing that you indicated about the screen, what information did you have about the screen that was different from what she reported to you?
I believe there was a question as to whether the screen had been cut, perhaps with a sharp.
And as far as the going out the window piece of it, you were aware that she didn't have any head injury, correct?
Yes, I am.
That she had the spinal injuries, the C1 injury, but no injuries to her head.
Correct.
And as far as her report of taking medication or taking pills, did you know whether she took all the pills that she had in the house or?
Well, I'm not sure about the house. She described all the pills in her bedroom.
And were you aware that there were other pill bottles located in other parts of the house?
I'm not sure I knew that.
How about the phone call? She indicated that at the time of the phone call, she believed she had the baby in her hand and she was doing something like taking food out of the fridge or getting food ready for the kids. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And were you aware, did you recall seeing crime scene photos that show that the kids' bowls were in the living room?
Yes.
And that Patrick later reported that he had seen Dawson eating green beans and chicken nuggets before he left the house? Were you aware of that? So, Dr. Mack, based on your review of this case, were you able to come to an opinion to a degree of medical certainty about whether this defendant was suffering from a mental disease or defect on January 24th of 2023?
Yes, I did.
And what is that opinion?
That, yes, she was suffering from a mental disease or defect, namely major depressive episode as a part of major depressive disorder.
And as far as the substantial capacity to appreciate wrongfulness or criminality of conduct, were you able to come to an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty about that?
Yes,
And what's your opinion regarding that?
that she had retained that capacity.
And what information do you rely upon to come to that conclusion?
The first point is that this was a continuation. Her mental state at that time was a continuation of the mental state she had had for months. And it was a mental state that included the capacity to control her behavior and also to be able to conform her conduct to standards of law. So in that sense, first of all, there's not an indication to me that there was something that changed the overall capacity in that regard. Secondly, to the extent we are talking about the ability to conform her conduct to the law, one can analyze her actions and her behaviors and her thoughts on that day, or as close as possible, to the moments of the deaths. And that includes taking one of her children to a pediatrician that day, engaging in fun activities around the house that day, having engaged with one of her children's teachers the day before, having engaged in normal conversations with the restaurant that she ordered food from, 3V, and then also interactions with the pharmacy, CVS, where she was getting the Miralax from. So in all these places, there was the ability to act normally. There doesn't seem to be any deviation from where she had been all along, which included this capacity. Furthermore, I would add that as a part of her interactions with the community or in driving, she had abided by law and abided by standards of the community at all those times. So there isn't necessarily, to me, any way in which that deviated that afternoon.
So you're speaking about her ability to conform conduct, which is one of the things we're talking about here. But I want to go back to the appreciation for wrongfulness or criminality. As far as that goes, were you able to form an opinion about that?
Yes, sorry about that.
That's
Yes.
okay. So what's your opinion about her ability to substantially conform, or excuse me, her substantial capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness or criminality of her conduct?
So I again would go to thinking about what had been her state of mind for at least the month prior, the several months prior, and in all that time, there wasn't any feature that indicated that she didn't have that capacity. But furthermore, when there were moments when she thought about harming the children, when she had the thoughts about that, she was aware in those moments beforehand that that was wrong or against the law, and that she could be punished for such an act.
You're referring to the December conversation with her husband and her mom?
Yes, and her thoughts about the idea that if anyone knew what I was thinking, the children might be taken away from me.
And also, did the fact that she hadn't had any significant medication changes during that time period, does that also inform your opinion about that?
Well, as that aligns with what I was saying before about how, while depressed, her mental state was relatively stable. It was perhaps improving, I'm not sure about that, but it was stable.
We're about to strike that, he's not sure about it.
All right. That answer is stricken. All right.
So the fact that she hadn't undergone any more significant medical or medication changes, I should say, did that signify to you that she had been in the same kind of state she had in the months before?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what about the interaction with Dr. Tufts on January 23rd? Did anything about that suggest that there were any concerns or distress that would have changed her ability to appreciate wrongfulness of her conduct?
No. In that interaction, she displayed normal thinking and the ability to think ahead and to navigate the world.
And what about the statement that she referred to when she was killing the kids, the go to God. Does that inform your opinion?
It does.
And why?
My understanding is that the sentiment, go to God, is a way of bestowing or thinking about the children as innocents and as ones who hadn't done wrong, while what she was doing was the opposite, was wrong, or could be construed as wrong. And so go to God not only was a hope for the children, but also a description of the situation.
Okay, and what about the report from her that the voice was telling her, this is your last chance? Is that significant to identify whether she would have had some knowledge or known that it was something that was wrong?
Well, to the extent that it was seen as her last chance, yes, because there was an awareness that it was something that would be disallowed by their father.
And as far as after the incident, when she woke up at the Brigham and Women Hospital, you're aware that she had reported to the staff there that she was horrified, correct?
Yes.
And so the fact that she immediately afterwards identified that she was horrified, does that go to her capacity to appreciate the wrongfulness of her conduct?
Yes. One can consider that her mental state, once she was removed from the dexmedetomidine, was similar to what it had been on January 24th. And in that regard, the feeling of horror, the feeling of shame that comes from being horrified indicates that she was aware that it had been the wrong thing to do.
And then finally, just to go back to the substantial capacity to conform conduct, you've told us a little bit about that, about the fact that her condition hadn't really changed all that much. You outlined what she did that day. But is there anything else to consider, based on everything that you reviewed, that would indicate to you that she did maintain the substantial capacity to conform her conduct to the requirements of the law?
I think that in the household, she was engaging in this activity methodically, which highlights to me that there was an ability to conform her behavior to expectations of living in a household.
What do you mean methodically?
As I understand the deaths, they were done methodically, and I think you asked me about that earlier, one by one, in a way that was organized and that was intended to achieve a particular goal. Similarly, her attempt at suicide was organized and thoughtful in a sense that it included as many possible methods as possible.
And as far as the killings of the children methodically, did she report to you in any way that she was given direction by this voice on how to complete the act and what exactly to do?
No, she did not.
And what about the call with Patrick? Is there anything about that indicates that she maintained some control or the ability to control herself, where she did engage in a short conversation with him?
Well, that aligns with what we were talking about before in terms of being aware that he would disapprove or disallow this, and yet she didn't say anything. She didn't say help, or she didn't say, I'm having these thoughts, so it wasn't stated.
So again, as far as your overall evaluation of this defendant, Lindsay Clancy, regarding the events of January 24th, 2023, what ultimately is your opinion to a degree of medical certainty regarding criminal responsibility?
My opinion is that she retained the capacities that were required for having criminal responsibility for these actions.
Thank you.